segment that we've been doing on Mondays with Kirk from What's New Video Games. He's linked below in the description if you'd like to go tell him how right or how wrong he is about a subject. We're usually disagreeing or discussing something we might not see eye to eye on. And today we're talking about Sea of Thieves. It climbed the pre-order charts on PlayStation, and people are really curious as to why that's happening. And Kirk is one of, I think it says here, he's one of the 7 people that actually like Skull and Bones. And so he is going to make some comparisons because he did try out Sea of Thieves. I've always loved Sea of Thieves and have always wanted a PvE mode because it's just such a pleasant game. I'm going to end the previous stream that was about the Xbox former executive who spoke out and said some things about no future console, maybe Halo coming to other platforms. So there's a lot to discuss here. There's demand apparently for maybe just Rare or Xbox games in general seeming to, be well received on the PlayStation platform because people are like, well, it'll climb that pre-order chart, rather quickly the day it hits, and then that's not really indicative of anything. Well, I would say it is because there was actually 2 versions of Sea of Thieves on the pre-order charts. One was in the number 1 spot, one was in like the 5th spot. So clearly the PlayStation audience doesn't have a problem with the filth of Xbox coming over to their platform. So you tried it out. Tell us what
for the second time,
by
the way.
This is the second time you've tried this game out. What were your thoughts on this game before we kind of get into the meat of the discussion?
So I tried it out because I never went and played the Pirates of the Caribbean content. And I feel like that's like the main content offering that they have there. I know there's a bunch of like Monkey Island people out there that are really into that, but I really did not like that I logged into the game and it was like play and it's like, okay, do you want to just jump in and do like sandbox or do you want to do Monkey Island? And I was like, where's the Pirates of the Caribbean? Like you have this multi-million-dollar IP with like tons of content. Apparently there's like 7 hours of content based around it in your game. And the only thing that you have available for me to jump straight into from the menu is the Monkey Island thing. Like, why is it not both? And they removed it. I looked it up. It used to be there in the main menu. So they got rid of the Pirates of the Caribbean in the menu. I don't know why. So that was strike 1. I was annoyed already. But yeah, I did find it. Lono's in my DMs like, dude, it's not that hard. Just go. It's a guy on the beach. You got to talk to him. Like, it's whatever. So I figured it out. And so I'm doing this thing. And like, I swear, I'm not lying. I played for 2 hours and did not like that. It took 2 hours to encounter my first combat sequence. Like the entire time before that, it was like a walking simulator, like puzzler with no direction. Like there's not even like a quest log that tells you like what you need to do next. Like you're just wandering around with like some idea of like maybe the direction that you're supposed to go in. And like you see a door that isn't open and you're like, can I open that? I don't know. And then it turns out that you can, and you keep going forward. And it was just like this like monotonous walking simulator-esque like puzzle game with like no narration basically. Like it felt like when you go in a cave in Skyrim and it takes you like 20 minutes to do the cave, and like you find everything in it and then you leave. Like that was basically the gameplay loop of this.
Okay, so were you getting like the missions where you go and you got to figure out the clues and dig up the treasure and pull?
No,
up
I did that
map?
before. I did that when the game launched. I tried that out.
Okay, so you didn't do any of that this time.
No, I just did the Pirates of the Caribbean content, and it was very underwhelming, I would say.
And in the Pirates of the Caribbean content, this is where you said it took too long to get into a combat sequence. So everything you just said was in the context of
yes,
you were doing Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay,
yeah,
because the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff was meant to be more of like a PvE driven experience, not necessarily one that would have been covered in a lot of combat. So it sounds like maybe were you bringing some of your Skull and Bones expectations over? Like you wanted it to be kind of more high intensity?
I was bringing the everybody wants to be a pirate, not a boat expectations over. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go be a pirate. I'm going to go be a pirate in the #1 franchise to be a pirate. Let's go be a pirate. Let's do it. Everybody's telling me it sucks to be a boat. Let's go be a pirate, be a swashbuckling, cutlass wielding. Oh, I'm just walking around with a lantern in a cave. Oh, I'm just walking around.
Well, but come on, you skipped the core. You admittedly skipped the core elements of the game.
Oh, I gotta turn this lever.
You skipped the core elements of the game so that you could go to the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. You said you didn't do any of the missions.
What you're telling me that the people that are pre-ordering the game on PlayStation don't want to play the multi-million-dollar IP in this. Like, they don't want to talk to Jack Sparrow. You're telling me they don't want that?
I mean, I'm not going to try to presume what people want to play. I do think Jack Sparrow and the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff is a draw, but I also think getting into the core loops of the game, which is you do quests, you sail, you find treasure, you bring it back, you get in fights.
Don't even get me started on the sailing, okay? I'm like on this sloop. I've got to like go to the rope, like pull the rope, put the sail down, you know, like all this stuff. Like in Skull and Bones, I just hit a button. It sails down. I'm sailing. I'm going fast. Like where you're gonna pull the rope down, and then I gotta crank the thing and lift the anchor so the anchor comes out. Oh, that takes 10 seconds. And do that, and then now I'm on the wheel, and the boat's like moving fast. Oh, I'm gonna hit that island. Oh, I'm gonna hit it in like 5 seconds. Oh, better pull the rope. Oh, it's too late. Oh, now there's a hole in my boat.
Now,
there's a hole in my boat, so I gotta get a plank of wood and throw the wood at the hole so that the hole gets
I'm genuinely curious about this. I'm curious about this.
Emergent gameplay at its finest. Oh my god.
Okay, so you're playing Skull and Bones where you drive around as a boat, you do stuff as a boat. You're a boat in Skull and Bones. And this game where you actually have to do all those things, raise and lower sails, you have to tack, you have to manage the wind, you got to look where you're going, you got to look at the map, you might get hit by something.
You do have to manage the wind in Skull and Bones, but
Okay, so you do. I'm just listing all the things that you have to do in Sea of Thieves that I would say are more of immersion touch points of being a pirate as opposed to driving a boat like a car in water. I mean, essentially, like it's more combat focused in Skull and Bones. You're not managing the same number of things. You're seeming to indicate that you find those things to be annoying, that you have to manage all those things while
tedious,
sailing. Oh, you think they're tedious? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm the exact opposite. I think that the sailing in Sea of Thieves is one of the greatest things about it. It's the waves, the sound, the creaking of the boat, managing all those elements, especially with another person, but even by yourself, I think are actually some of the best parts of this game, creating a pirate sim. And you're saying I don't like that.
Maybe I shouldn't have swayed you off of Pacific Drive, because like the comparison here like would be analogous to comparing like Forza Horizon and Pacific Drive. Like where Forza Horizon is like you get in a car and you're immediately just delivered dopamine and fun. And I mean, people argue this Skull and Bones is not that, so whatever. And then in Pacific Drive, it's like, all right, I've got to put the car out of park into drive. I've got to turn the key on. I've got to, chart a course on the map. All right, I got to drive. All right, I got to park. I got to put it in park. I got to turn the key off. I get out of the car. Like, it's very, like, step after step after step type of thing. I've got to fill the gas tank up, because it's running out of gas or whatever. Then I have to put the gas can, like, in the actual holster for the gas can in the trunk. That sort of thing. And so, like, I don't know that... I mean, I guess I can understand, because I did review Pacific Drive, and I thought there was a lot of atmospheric, kind of compelling, like, I liked engaging with the world that they created, and I can see that, like, I can see that pervasively in Sea of Thieves, that people would feel that way. The only thing about Pacific Drive is that it has a very fundamental and core progression loop to the entire game, which is the car. Like, the whole point of doing all this tedious stuff is that it's reflected in the actual tangible evolution of this car. Like, all these tedious steps and, like, doing thing after thing after thing monotonously is like, oh, I have an awesome, like, steel-plated car now, to go into these zones or whatever. In Sea of Thieves, it's like, it just gives you a ship. Like, all you're doing is, like, getting cosmetic stuff. Like, even the money that you're doing the heists with, and, like, people are chasing you or whatever after you found it, you're trying to get it back to the outpost or whatever. Like, even the money is just to get cosmetic stuff. Whereas in, like, Skull and Bones, like, I'm literally fighting, like, ghost ships and sea monsters and stuff, and getting, like, Destiny-style loot to drop, where I've now got, like, a legendary flamethrower on the front of my boat that, like, does more damage than any other flamethrower in the game. Like, that's cool. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I am willing to concede your point on, like, maybe I went and tried to play, like, a very specific kind of content because that was what was interesting to me, and it isn't the main content offering of the game in Sea of Thieves. The Pirates of the Caribbean Tall Tales, But I figured like if anything was gonna grab me, it was gonna be that. So I wanted to give the game like its fair shot to like kind of show me something that I was gonna be pretty engaged with, and it just completely did not grip me or captivate me at all in that regard.
Well,
and I played the normal loop before when it launched, and I thought that was pretty underwhelming as well.
And I can appreciate that because I had similar feelings about Cyberpunk. It never hooked me. And then I tried to use Phantom Liberty, and it did. It worked. It got me into the game. So I could totally appreciate somebody being like, I'm not really big on Sea of Thieves. Let me see if the Pirates of the Caribbean content can pull me in. I think the dilemma with that is Sea of Thieves as a content offering, as a game, was already in, I would say, a good spot, and that was meant to be additive. It wasn't meant to be like this, oh, we need to have a turning point for our game. So I just don't think this game is for you, and I think that's fine. I think I came to similar conclusions, like as you're describing the fact that you're only really getting money for cosmetics. I've always said this game is the most juxtaposed game I've ever seen because you're literally grinding. It's a very grindy game. It takes a long time to make progress in this game. And you're fundamentally doing that to play pirate dress up. And it's just such a weird combination of very casual, very laid back, like motivation of like, ooh, cool, pretty stuff for my ship and my pirate.
But you have to play it for like 150 hours to like make any progress whatsoever.
Exactly. And not only that, that hardcore element can be met with, you said you got struck by lightning. My wife and I played one night.
I forgot. Yeah, I was just standing on the beach, like in the equivalent of like the Destiny Tower. Like I'm in the hub zone, and I literally get struck by lightning in the same spot twice. I thought, because I talked to an NPC, I thought it was like a quest thing. Like I thought it was like, oh, I'm gonna get transported to the like Ferry of the Dead or whatever. No, I just got freaking killed by lightning for no reason.
Yeah.
Like in the hub area. Like what is this game? Like what is happening? Like I don't understand. And I don't understand. Like you said, like it takes 150 hours to like make tangible progress, and like you can like get your own ship, which I guess I don't know what the draw of that is, because they give you a ship every time you log in. So I guess there's some sort of carryover if you get your own ship as far as like cosmetics and features and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
like,
the
cool,
decorations that you unlock will they will carry over. Like that's what your ship's gonna look like.
Well, yeah, but what I saw was like if you get like 250,000 gold or like whatever, like the not pay for currency, like the actual currency that you earn in the game. If you get like a bunch of that, which I got like 2,000 while I was playing, so that was like 2 hours. That gives you kind of a rate there. But yeah, like if you get that much, you can buy your own ship. But I don't know what your own ship equates to, because they give you a new ship every time you log in. So I don't know what that lets you do. Maybe it lets you kind of Animal Crossing your ship and the cabin and stuff or something like that.
There's a whole grind of captaincy that I never got into because, you know, my wife and I tried to play it because I think this is like the perfect couch co-op game to just chill with and sailing around.
We have another Xbox.
And we had, we did Xbox and a PC is how we did it.
Okay.
And, well, soon enough it won't matter. I'll be able to play on 2 PlayStations.
I just mean, when you use the words couch co-op, that means a certain thing to me. That doesn't mean
right. I shouldn't have said couch co-op.
Yeah,
that's right, because it's not split screen. However,
nothing is anymore. They took that from us, Lono.
They did, but we had a similar thing happen where like 2 hours of progress kind of got erased because a volcano exploded and lit our ship on fire, lit us on fire, killed us, sank our ship, and I was like, yeah, I'm done with this game. Because I've always sort of felt that pain of you have to avoid PvP. And if you don't avoid PvP, you kind of have to embrace it. Which that was just never why I wanted to play this game. I never wanted to get in fights. I never wanted to get into combat. So for me, I've always kind of felt like, man, this game could just be so great as that PvE co-op game. And they just have been completely not just hesitant, but against doing that. Now, on to the main subject here. This thing climbs the PS5 pre-orders screen, which doesn't mean it's being pre-ordered in total more than the games it's above. People saw it above Final Fantasy and Rise of the Ronin. That's not how that page works. Sea of Thieves.
Oh, it's not? Because it's very misleading in that regard then.
Oh, of course. At a given time, it's showing you that that's the current game that people are pre-ordering.
Oh, like it's like daily or something like that? Or
Yeah,
like
it
weekly?
refreshes constantly. So
Oh,
usually
okay.
a new title will launch to the top of the list, and it'll
Okay.
bump titles that have been there for a while. Like obviously, no one's pre-ordering Rise of the Ronin in great numbers now because it's been there for a while. So
Yeah.
it's not going to compete because its launch date is like a week or two away.
Yeah, I got you.
But I don't want to take away from the fact that this game seems to be already getting some people kind of rallying behind it and saying, yeah, man, Sea of Thieves. Now, I attributed it to a couple of things. I think situations like this are always 18 different things. It's not one thing. I do think it being the very first Rare game to ever come to PlayStation is kind of a big deal. A lot of people currently playing on their PlayStations cut their teeth on Donkey Kong Country and GoldenEye and classic Rare titles. So what do you think is driving some of the surge of interest? And if in fact this game is hugely popular on PlayStation, you know, what do you think is one of or some of the factors driving that?
Well, for one thing, I'm gonna take this as an opportunity to posit a theory that I have, which is that I think PlayStation does a really, really good job of sort of showcasing, and this is like in conjunction with the devs, I would assume as well, or the publisher, whoever designs like the logos and stuff. They do a really, really good job of like, you ever see like those like gold edition and deluxe edition and ultimate edition logos like in the store, and you're like, oh, it looks so sick. Like I think because like they have like this orange logo for it, and it looks so cool. And I feel like that's why that one is getting pre-ordered like more. It doesn't actually matter. Like it's not like when you buy like a physical copy. Like I have the physical like deluxe or whatever it is for Midnight Suns, and it looks really, really cool because I have an Xbox case and it's like black and green. So like the case looks really sick. But like they do like these deluxe editions and premium editions and stuff, and they have like these awesome logos or whatever, but like you're never going to actually see that on your dashboard. But I am firmly convinced that that's why they have these gold editions and stuff. Like that's why the devs or the publishers do this, and PlayStation like showcases them that way, is because I think people buy them. Like, and also I don't know, I just don't know that people are like, oh, I'd rather spend $60 than $40. I don't know, it's just an interesting phenomenon for me. But if you did notice it, it's the $60 one that's higher. Like more people are pre-ordering the $60 version than the $40 version. The $60 version is at the top for this week or this last 48 hours or whatever we think the refresh rate is for that list. But yeah, I'm looking at like what that edition gives you, and it looks like all deluxe edition content, some sort of warship set, 5 days early access. Okay, that's probably it. Actually, I didn't realize that 5 days early access is nice.
That's a huge pre-order bonus that's becoming standard now.
Yeah, but also that logo looks amazing. It's like orange fire colored.
I thought the orange fire was the deluxe edition. That's not the standard.
It is.
Edition.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
It was the higher one, wasn't it? I saw it at the
premium.
Yeah, I saw that in the number one spot.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's those two factors. Like people see it, it's like it really pops more than the green does. But also, that 5 days early access. If anybody's looking at like what you get, that seems like it's pretty good. You also get the plunder pass as part of that, which is like if you're not doing the battle pass, what is your progression in this game? I will say that's something that I'll knock it for. I don't like games where the only progression is the battle pass. Like I feel like that's a cop out when you have no other progression elements other than your battle pass. I just think like design your game better, kind of.
This game has tons of progression though outside the battle pass, like the individual NPCs that you can rank up, and then
but
you get
isn't
better
that
missions.
Just like I don't know, that's like Alak Jalal in Destiny, like, oh, you're Dead Orbit 3 now, woohoo! Like
no, it unlocks
really
more missions
matter?
And stuff. You get better payout. You get better payout. There's definitely a good spiral staircase grind in this game outside of the battle pass.
Okay, but you asked me why do I think people are coming in droves to buy it. I will say I don't know. You seem to be knowledgeable of something that I'm not, which is the whole Rare thing. I haven't seen any discussion of the Rare aspect of it at all. Like I haven't seen anybody be like, "Oh, I'm showing up for Rare because I played Rare as a kid," or like whatever. Like that's something that I've seen you talk about, and you might just be tapped in or have insight into that being a reason. But I mean, as far as Rare goes, right? Like we're talking about what? GoldenEye 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and the Banjo-Kazooie games. Is there other stuff that would make people? Oh well, Donkey Kong. Is there other stuff that would make people really, really nostalgic for Rare to want to go out and buy a pirate game? Like I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of people looked at Rare, and when they decided to do Sea of Thieves and they haven't done much else, I do think people are curious, like, is it a fun game? Is it a good game? I also think...
But the game's been out for like 6-7 years, right? Like, you can go ascertain that right now. Like, you don't have to pay... Like, that's the thing that makes me so bizarrely confused about this game. Is like... So you have Skull and Bones, right?
Mm-hmm.
That... Because of online videos showcasing one singular minigame in the game that I don't even think I've done in the last 7 hours of gameplay because I'm doing other much cooler stuff like fighting ghost ship bosses and stuff. And God, I ran into a sea monster that like I don't even think I was supposed to find yet, and it just rocked my, you know what, like it like 2-hit dead. That thing was enormous and really powerful. Tangent, sorry. But yeah, like the internet, as with a lot of games, this happens, right? One video or 2 or 3 videos go around the internet, and people are like, "Oh, bad game." We've consensus decided that this is a terrible game because of these 3 clips or whatever. Moving on, like not going to give it any more attention.
Right.
And this game has an 8-hour free trial. You can go play this game right now and decide for yourself whether you think it's good, whether you think it's bad, whatever. But people aren't going to do that because the internet decided. Like the internet held a 3-minute court session. They said, "Oh, these clips look bad. This game's terrible. Moving on." And a lot of the discourse as well from, like, not you, but, like, other people that I'm not going to name drop. But a lot of big creators were like, this game's terrible. And, like, that was the narrative. And to be fair, those people played it. But with that, you can actually go experience it for free. With Sea of Thieves... For PlayStation players, right? Because if you have Xbox or PC and you can get Game Pass, like you can just try it out for what, $10? I don't know if it's in core. $17 max, right? But for PC players, like they're dropping $60 to go play this game 5 days early that's existed for 7 years. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why are you dropping $60 on a game that like if we were having this conversation last year, Lono, like if you were like, if a year from now, Sea of Thieves comes to PlayStation randomly, like this is a complete hypothetical because none of this third-party discourse is happening yet, and it's $60 for some sort of deluxe or whatever edition.
Yeah.
Will people buy it for that? And I would have been like, no, because it's not even doing that well on Xbox, and it's in the subscription. Like, there's people that play it. Like, it has a nice little community. But, like, it by no means is this, like, a big-ticket box office type of experience, like, on there. I mean, if it was, right, we would be looking at Xbox a little bit differently. Like, if Sea of Thieves was this massive success as an exclusive, then that Xbox would be able to tout that. So I think it's like self-evident that this is like a smaller niche and like not incredibly bombastically successful and like technical achievement or like a gameplay achievement type of game.
I think it's the live service effect.
People are like going out and dropping $60. I do not understand.
Well, I mean, I can try and make sense of it for you a little bit. I think it's the live service effect. I think when people come to a game like this late and everything's bundled together, they have no problem spending around $60 to get all of that. Like, the value of Sea of Thieves has not depreciated over time. I would say it's been curated over time. You have this sort of suite of content that you're now getting. So when people come late to like a Destiny or something and they get all of the content, all the DLCs, all those updates and additions, and then they can buy it for the $60, I think that's why. I think maybe you might be missing the forest for the trees because you're thinking it's an older game, it was never that big. And it's like, you're not wrong. It is an older game. And I don't think Sea of Thieves has ever been this content or console driver, but it's a pleasant, ongoing live service game with a passionate team. And I think people are like, man, for $60, I get everything they've worked on for like the last 6 or 7 years. That's probably playing into it more than just... like Hi-Fi Rush can't be that. Like, Hi-Fi Rush is just a game by itself, so you can't sell that at some high dollar ticket amount. Like, you can't take an old game and do that. But I think with live service games, you have a distinct advantage of saying, here's everything for the last 5 years all in one package.
So it's like the Rainbow Six Siege effect, or like the Elder Scrolls Online effect. Like, they can say, for this one entry price, you can get all the content we've ever worked on, and we brought this game from like humble beginnings sort of forward to be this like experience that people generally are positive on. That's kind of what we're talking about.
And you're also, I know people hate when I do this, you're bringing it to an ecosystem that doesn't mind spending money. Like, I think that's such a point here. Like,
I think there's a culture on PlayStation of like, you go out and buy the games. Like, people are going to go out and buy Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin on the same day. Not even being able to play both of them, but they'll go buy them on the same day instead of wait for a sale. Like, I think there is a culture of that, of people that have a PlayStation that are like, yeah, I'm gonna go out and buy the game. So I totally understand that. I sort of fall into that sometimes. Like, I stupidly, as in terms of curating my own financial situation and budgeting, went out and bought Lies of P to get the 3 days early access and get the deluxe items and be able to get the platinum trophy. Could have played it on Game Pass, but I wanted it on PlayStation. I also wanted it to like it was like evocative of like a Bloodborne 2 or something. So like, I wanted like those, like, the square triangle X button prompts. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wanted to like feel that Bloodborne juice flowing. Pause. But yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that if I really wanted to be conscious financially. But yeah, so there is sort of like it's a great thing for PlayStation, right? That they've been able to accomplish this. Is kind of comparable to Apple, like what you were talking about with like replacing your phone every 2 years or whatever. It's like, I think they've got people in a habitual state of just going out and buying the games. And so it's like, yeah, Sea of Thieves is coming, therefore I buy it. There might be a large contribution to the mentality and the buying practices there, as far as like why a bunch of people went out and bought it, more so than the Rare thing, I think.
Well, and also, I had to call out our boy Doc Dark on this, because I told him his slander of Ori would not stand, because he's out here saying Ori...
Slandering Ori?
He was saying they should humble themselves, and because when the guy said, if you want to support our game, buy it on Steam, and he was like, you should humble yourselves, like, your game isn't worth buying, basically, is what he was saying, like, it belongs on Game Pass. And I'm like, I can never imagine a hardcore PlayStation fan taking that attitude with like a breakout title like Ori. Like, if a title like that hit... Helldivers is a great example. Helldivers is busted the door down. It's $40. Everybody loves it.
Ori and like the Blind Forest and the Will of the Wisps.
Yes, correct.
Doc Dark was poo-pooing Ori and the Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps.
He wasn't saying they were low quality. It was basically like, don't get too big for your britches. You guys belong in the sales bin. You're not some big, you're not some big piece of property.
I would have to see what the comment he was reacting to was. Maybe he was like reacting to the tone of the sort of like, remember when Matt Piscatella said but somehow they convinced people that exclusives are good, or what? Like, maybe the tone was like such that he would be like, all right, slow your road there, guys that are saying that, But yeah, just in a vacuum, if you're gonna say that Ori and the Blind Forest and Will of the Wisp isn't worth a purchase, that's wild to me.
Well, and
I would buy them on Switch.
He defended himself today in my chat. He defended himself today in my chat and said even Helldivers 2 is a Game Pass game. And I just think he's being tongue-in-cheek, but I also think
that's that J-Dub energy right there.
It's it's Game Pass energy. It's like, I'm not going to buy games. Like, I'm going to pay for a subscription service.
No, you're not going to attribute that. I don't know what Doc is on saying that you shouldn't buy Ori, but absolutely you should buy Ori. Ori is a visual masterpiece, and it's very good at minimalistic storytelling, I guess. Like, yeah, that's fantastic. That's like indie done AAA. I don't know who's out here poo-pooing Ori besides Doc.
I think you're getting lost in the minutia of what he said.
No,
it betrays
you
an
are
attitude.
trying to make a generalization. Which is that
it betrays an attitude.
This one comment from Doc that like is him wilding out, being out of pocket about a game franchise that is objectively good.
You don't think it betrays an attitude?
Of like the entire... No, you'd have to show me a pervasive showing of this.
So you don't think Game Pass has had an effect on the culture? you don't think Game Pass has had an effect on the culture at Xbox? That like
I am
they're
pointing
more
out
prone
your
to
inability to demonstrate that in a tangible way.
well, you can demonstrate it in a tangible way. They're always the lowest on the sales ratios. Their sales numbers are low, even for the number of consoles they have in circulation.
Yeah, but I think you're taking it to to the extent of it being like a perversion. Like, I think, yes, it stands to reason that, like, if you subscribe to HBO or to Prime Video, you're probably less likely to build up a digital library of movies and like seasons of television shows that you have bought, right? Like, you have a subscription service. Therefore, the utility of being able to watch things is being granted through the service. So you're less likely to buy things. But I don't think that is emblematic of like a cultural thing of like people being unwilling or not wanting to buy things. I think it's like if they have the ability to play it, then they wouldn't necessarily like. I'm trying to draw a distinction here. I'm saying if somebody says I can play Ori and it's a good game because I have Game Pass, I can play it, and so I don't necessarily need to buy it right now. But if my Game Pass ever expires or whatever, I would maybe buy it so I can keep playing it or so I can have it in my collection or whatever. I think that's the normal, rational person and their viewpoint on this. And you're pointing to Doc saying, hold on now, Ori, you're not even worth buying at MSRP, as like emblematic of Xbox Game Pass users' mentality about buying games. I don't agree with that. I think, sure, there's a certain level of utility offered by having a subscription that would lead to some amount of decrease in game purchases. But I don't think that there's an attitude of people that everybody, as a generalization, that has that subscription, saying, "Oh, buying games is bad, and I don't want to do it ever." I don't think that exists necessarily.
Well,
I think it's a
I didn't say
thing.
I didn't say everybody. I said it's fostered a culture where they'll either
Culture would mean that it's pervasive and applies to a large amount of people, the majority.
Yeah, I know what the word means because I used it to indicate that there are people now in large quantities of numbers within the Game Pass ecosystem on Game Pass that are less likely to buy games because Game Pass value is so enormous. Like, the value is it outweighs everything else that you could possibly. It's like, why would I buy? I have so many games I can play. To think that it hasn't had an effect, like what I was driving at was, I think people that are shocked by, as I was pushing back on some of your shock that like I can't believe people are spending this kind of money for Sea of Thieves. It's an older game. I think you're going into ecosystems where when someone sees value, they spend money. They're like, yeah, I'll buy that. That looks great. There is no culture of I'll wait for that to hit PS Plus, or if it's not on PS Plus, I'm just not going to play it. That is certainly a mentality I've seen voiced numerous times within the Xbox loyal. Like, that's just an attitude that they have. I'm not saying it's a bad or wrong attitude. I think it's logical. What you have so much content on Game Pass for such a low price. I actually think as a consumer it makes logical sense to say I'm going to buy less games now.
I will say Diablo supports your hypothesis. Diablo 4. Like, people didn't want to go out and buy Diablo 4 because they were staunchly adamant that it would come to Game Pass eventually, and then here the chickens are coming home to roost with it coming this month. And I think there's a lot of people that held out for that. I think that's probably the shining example of that. So I'll concede in some respect. I just didn't like you attributing the sentiment that a game might be worth less if it's on Game Pass, I guess.
I think you were misunderstanding my point. I wasn't saying it was worth less if it was on Game Pass.
Well, that's what it sounded like Doc was saying about Ori, but I wasn't sure.
I think he was saying you're not some big title, you're not some big name. You need to humble yourself. Like, you're not worth buying.
He needs to put some more respect on Ori's name.
That's what I said. His Ori slander will not stand. But as he even indicated with Helldivers, I don't disagree. I said if Helldivers 2 were to come to Xbox, a year later, I actually think it would make more sense to throw it on Game Pass because I think you get more players and potentially you get more money. I'm thinking purely strategically here as a live service game, and I think that just goes to show that a live service game can land on PlayStation and they can sell it instead of just having to give it away for free, because we all know free-to-play funnels for live service are pretty big and pretty nice. But Helldivers 2 is proving no, you can charge money for your game even if it is live service. And Eugene did say on this subject, he says if people were willing to buy games on Xbox, Xbox would be seeking third-party exclusives, and they wouldn't be looking to port games to PlayStation. The strategy shift is proof that their users are not buying games, and I actually think that is true. And I don't think this is going to be the first game to climb the charts on PlayStation. I think Sea of Thieves is going to do very well over there.
I mean, just the fact that it is selling pre-orders so much, and it's a 7-year-old game. I mean, it just justifies. Which I do think it's self-fulfilling to a degree. Like, we talked about this, I think, offline. Is like, there's the obvious aspect of like the J-dubs and the other like pony Twitter guys are like gonna go out and buy it, because it's like, yeah, bring those Xbox games over here. Like, it's like the whole like meme of like, they're gonna show up for the third party because that's like their entire sort of content personality is to make fun of Xbox for doing the third party. So it's like it's almost like an event at this point. Like there was all this hullabaloo and ruckus about these games coming over and possibly more games coming over. And so in a way, they're contributing to like a culturally defining moment by going out and dropping $60 on this game.
You think there's enough people that operate within that belief system to drive these sales numbers? You think there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, man, I can't wait to buy Xbox games coming to PlayStation as like the tribalistic element of it?
No, I think you're isolating the factor, which I'm not trying to do. It's a contributing factor. So it would just be additive on other things, like the other things that we're talking about. Like, right, like you can weigh, you were talking about doing a bunch of research before you make an impulsive or any type of purchase for yourself on the previous stream. And so like, you're going to have like a pros list of like, here's all the reasons I should buy this. And the longer that list gets, the more likely you are to buy it, right? Because there's many contributing factors for why you want to buy it or why you think it's a benefit to buy it. And so I think like the fact that it's the first Rare game on PlayStation, the fact that it maybe is more appealing than Skull and Bones for some people for whatever reason, the fact that like you said, there's all this content. We're about to be in season 12 now. When the game launches, like there's all this content that's available on offer. The fact that you get 5 days early access to it, which I guess is good, even though the game's been out 7 years, and the fact that you can sort of participate in this culturally defining event, I said it right the first time, event that is like sort of a meme, like it's sort of a bit of a joke, like, oh yeah, I'm showing out for the Xbox games on PlayStation. Like, I think it's more lighthearted than that. Like, I don't think it's like a genuine like, however you just worded it, of like people being like, yes, like I really want this. Like, I think it's more like, I kind of want this, but like also it's kind of funny, so like I'm gonna go out and buy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's more of a lighthearted thing of like, we got you games, like that sort of thing. And so like I think there is like a sort of fun what's the word, lighthearted kind of playful nature of it, where people are gonna go out and play it. And it's just like, if you can create sort of a moment around your game, like the way that Helldivers did, and that's been pervasive, so that might be a bad example of it being more than a moment, I guess. But like Fall Guys or Among Us or like whatever, like if you can create like a cultural sort of moment around your game, people will show up for it, at least in the temporary period of time. And I think like the whole Xbox exclusivity conversation and the console wars and the back and forth and Colt Eastwood making the face or like whatever, like all that stuff, I think contributes to like Sea of Thieves, like it's the first one coming, right? I think. And like, so it's like Sea of Thieves coming to PlayStation, Pentiment might be coming first. Sea of Thieves coming to PlayStation, like it's a big deal, and I think that contributes to people going out and buying it. By the way, some people in chat are saying that like when we were like debating, I was talking over you too much. So if that's accurate, let me know. But I feel like when we get in debates, we kind of push on each other.
It's fine.
If I'm doing it too much, let me know.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to miss the cue. Like there was just a couple times I was trying to cut in, but it's hard because like it's two people talking. With that mentality of, if this is successful, they're going to do more. Pentiment they dropped like right away basically, and then there's this and there's Hi-Fi. A lot of people are basically saying, oh, you guys hated on these games for so long and now you want them. I think what people are missing in that equation is the vast majority of PlayStation users never got caught up in any of that. And probably they know what Sea of Thieves is. Everybody's heard of Sea of Thieves. It's been around for a long time. It's a very, very household name within gaming circles, especially because it does come from Rare. And, Hi-Fi Rush was constantly talked about for at least, 14 days after it dropped. And I think that's going to be what drives this. I think you're going to see more titles that are sort of like bigger and recognizable making that leap. And in that realm, what games or do you think we're getting more this year? Because these are all happening so quickly. Do we get more Xbox games to make the jump in like the second half? Because after April, that's 4, and then that's it. They've already moved them. I mean, what would they move next?
I can name drop like insiders, right? Like, didn't Risk It for the Biscuit or whatever that guy's name is come out and publicly say that he's got insight or intel that Hellblade 2 is going to come?
I don't know how reliable or if he has sources at all. I don't buy his story for a couple of reasons. The production schedule of Hellblade 2. I think Hellblade 2 will come to PlayStation, but not this year. I think they'll port it later. I think they weren't even in full production in 2021, so I'm not sure if when they entered full production they suddenly decided to do parallel development. I think it makes more sense for that small of a team to spend that short of amount of time building for Xbox and PC. I could be wrong. Maybe they were already set up with pipelines since the game already is multiplat. The first game already is. But I don't know. I didn't see any reason to believe that he had better sources than anybody else. Nobody else is saying that about Hellblade.
It's probably an educated guess so that he looks good and right if it happens based on the fact that Hellblade 1 was on PlayStation. Like, if I was going to pick a franchise, I'd probably pick that one. He probably knows nothing, but it's an educated prediction in that it's a franchise that has been on the platform before. So if Xbox is now looking at taking franchises to other platforms, it would make sense with the install base of PlayStation and the amount of people in that install base that probably played the first game that would go out and buy the second game. It's like you're guaranteed to make sales then, like even more so than a Sea of Thieves, because Sea of Thieves is just an unknown quantity in the PlayStation ecosystem. Hellblade, like, I have the platinum for Hellblade. So if I didn't own an Xbox and wasn't going to play it on Game Pass, and then they announced Hellblade 2 coming to PlayStation, I'd go buy it. I'd go buy it for PlayStation. Guaranteed. I'm going to play it on Game Pass, so I don't need to. But if I only owned a PlayStation, I would go buy it. And there's a lot of people that only own a PlayStation. So I think that one comes. And then there's all this talk about Starfield, right? And like, you're doubling down again. Xbox Era's doubling down. They've stayed doubling down about it coming. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how Phil goes out there. I don't care that he said there's 4 games and Starfield isn't one of them. I don't care that that's how he said it. I don't know how you go out there and publicly say Starfield isn't one of the games coming to PlayStation, parentheses, right now, and you bring it later and people don't crucify you. Like, I don't know, obviously, in public discourse. I'm not talking about literally.
I mean, I think it's easy. I think it's easy to see that they are doing it because all of the PR, sort of mouthpieces.
Why would he say that?
Are saying that exclusives are bad.
Why would he go out there and say Starfield is not one of the games, like with that tone, like Starfield and Indiana Jones are not in those games? Like, why would you come out there and say that? Like,
he's a professional manipulator. He's been doing this for years. These plans were in place.
It's going to be like Sean Murray, dude. People are going to shred him, absolutely shred him. Like, I mean, that is just.
I think by the time it happens, and that's what the executives said in this IGN interview. He was like, you're going to have to weigh that against all the money you're going to potentially make. And he thinks that hardcore fans are shrinking. They're getting older. Like, there's not enough of them to care. And I also think they have all of their guys out here astroturfing and saying exclusives are bad. And the reason they're doing that is so they're getting everybody ready.
All I'm saying is, and Creature's right, and I already acknowledged that. He said there's 4 games coming, and then Tina Amini asked, are Starfield or Indiana Jones, are either of those in the games? And he said, no, they aren't. But what is the point of making that exchange if you're going to bring Starfield anyway? It just creates a very, very bad situation. I'm not saying that he lied. I understand that it was contextualized in the context of the 4 games. But why would you make a showing of that? To be clear, it's not Starfield and Indiana Jones. If you're gonna, like, if they knew before that podcast that they're bringing Starfield, and then the article comes out that says that they're bringing Starfield, and then in an effort to suppress that article, they came out with that podcast and said, there's 4 games coming, Starfield is not one of them. In a reaction to the article that reported that it's coming, and then they bring it to PlayStation, they're going to get destroyed.
I don't think
so. Discord. They're going to get absolutely destroyed. That is a complete cover-up job. Are you kidding me, Lono? They made Xbox Era look bad, like, by refuting the story. I mean, like, they literally were... The whole thing was a reaction to reports coming out from Xbox Era and Tom Warren that Starfield is coming to PlayStation. The whole point of that podcast was to dispel those rumors. They dispel them for what purpose? Just admit that it's happening. If it's happening, come out and don't lie and be like, yes, we're bringing Starfield to PlayStation. The reports are true. Like, that's not acceptable to run that level of misleading damage control.
That's why a lot of the
story that's accurate.
That's why a lot of the Xbox loyal got really angry, because at that same day, The Verge published an article where Phil was like, no game is off the table. He wouldn't say no to Starfield and Indiana Jones. And that's exactly, you're asking, why would he say that? Why would he say that? You're so close to hitting the bullseye. The only reason you would come out and do that is because you are planning on doing it. And you want to give people this sense of security and calm because you want them to stay on Game Pass, and you want your June showcase to drive more Game Pass or maintain more Game Pass subscribers. It's the same reason, if this is analogous to this, it's the same reason that PlayStation will not confirm that the PS5 Pro exists until they absolutely have to. They will not confirm big titles like Starfield or Jumping until they absolutely have to, because it will disrupt consumer confidence. It will hurt Game Pass numbers, and they're going to wait until the last moment to do that. That's why. That's exactly why he handled the conversation the way that he did.
It's deplorable and intentionally deceptive and misleading, and I deride it entirely. So if they do that, expletive them. Like, I mean, like, it's just like, no, you can't do that. Absolutely not. You cannot come out and intentionally mislead people to preserve the sales and sustainability of your product when it's actually the thing that people are concerned about. Like, if people are concerned that the product doesn't have value, and then you mislead them intentionally to try to convince them that it has value that it doesn't, and they were right all along, like, that's just wrong. Like, that's just ethically wrong. So
well, and that's
I
why
hope it comes, because I've resolved that if it's coming, I'd like to have it on PlayStation so that I can play it on PS6, because it's 30 frames that I don't have a PC, and I won't have a PC. I'm just not doing that. It's just like a personal preference. So yeah, I'd like to play Starfield on PS6. I'd like to have my save on PS6 because they've got the whole thing. I don't know how much you played Starfield. We weren't really talking back then, but it's got the whole thing with the new game plus and getting the gear and the stuff. Like, I don't want to spoil, but you get stuff for doing new game plus. That's cool, and there's progression. There's narrative build upon layers of doing new games plus. Like, there's, like, if you put a lot of hours in this game, there's perks and gear and things that you can get by the more times that you complete the game and things like that, to be very, very spoiler friendly about it, but still convey the concept. And so, like, I don't want to put all those hours in on Xbox when I really want to play the game on PS6, So I'd like to, if I'm going to play it more in 30 frames, like right now in this gen, I'd want to play it on PlayStation. So I hope it comes. But, like, also, if it does come, like, that's really bad, like, that they did that. So I don't know.
I do kind of feel like you're catching up to a slow motion car crash, because this is precisely why a lot of those Xbox guys got so furious that day.
No, I was mad too. You didn't see my, like, 8-minute monologue about how I was, like, irate about it? Like, yeah, I totally was there. But
it was the interview. It was the Verge interview that turned the tide. I think everybody walked away from the podcast being like, oh, they're making us feel better. There were people who immediately doubted him when he said it the way that he did, like, oh, these first 4, it's not Starfield and Indiana Jones. But I think the Verge interview was sort of the death knell. It was like any remaining bastion of hope that the Xbox loyal had, that there's going to be like this continued persistence of exclusivity. They were like, nah, this is over.
And to be clear, I think there's a difference between if they do it this holiday and they do it like 2.5 years from now. Like, I would be much less concerned about the ethics of it if they do it 2.5 years from now. Like, that might literally be like a change of direction, a change of insight and data, and like basically, well, we didn't think we were going to do it then, but we're struggling more, or we're really making all these sales from Sea of Thieves and these other things, and we just feel like we really need to do this as a company. Like, that would make sense to me. But if they do it this holiday, they knew all along. Like, it was just a setup job. Like, they knew all along that they were going to lie to everybody and then do it anyway. I mean, and they got called out on it, and they responded by saying, no, we're not doing that. Like, that's just wrong.
Well,
like, if anybody wants to buy into an ecosystem of a company that blatantly does that, like, that's their prerogative, but, like, I would not be giving them any more money.
Well, this is why Sea of Thieves has created even more consternation and frustration, because they are basically out here talking about how it's been this ongoing secret at the company. They had like a part of the studio sequestered off with like frosted glass, and they couldn't talk about it. And I saw, some of the Xbox loyal being like, well, this is why we're not getting any games. The studios are out here working on bringing games to PlayStation. And so I think people are looking at the last 3 to 4 years of this gen, and they're saying, we were not the priority. You tricked us. You had us all believing that this was going to be this turning point. This was going to be a huge generation for us. And you deprioritized the Series X. They don't make good on the promises of the power narrative. And now you're learning that, first-party studios were spending significant amounts of time and secrecy to create games for PlayStation. And I think that the veil just continues to slip, and people are ready to basically jump ship, no pun intended.
I want to respond or provide a clarification, rather, to something your producer said. He said ethics implicitly. What do you mean? They own the product. He's used an expletive. They own that and can sell it to whoever they want. I want to be very clear. There's no ethics in regard to where they sell Starfield. Like, they can do whatever they want. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the ethics of, it's like, to be very clear, there's no ethics involved in the decision of whether they want to bring Starfield, Halo, Gears of War, any product that they want to bring to any platform. They control that. There's no morality or ethics there. Not trying to say that there is. They can do whatever they want. Now, we might feel a little bit betrayed or like annoyed that we bought into Xbox because we wanted to play Elder Scrolls 6, and now Elder Scrolls 6 is going to come to PlayStation. But that's not an ethical concern, I don't think. The ethical concern is when seemingly reputable journalistic companies inform the public of what a company is going to do. In this hypothetical, right, Lono, we're saying that those reports were accurate to a certain extent, at least. The company comes out and says, no, we're not doing that, to dispel those reports and mislead people, knowing full well that they are going to do that within a foreseeable amount of time. That is unethical. It is unethical to do that. If it comes out into the public through journalism that you as a company are going to do something, and then you take steps to directly mislead the public that you are not going to do that thing when you have every intention of doing that thing, that is patently unethical for a company to do that.
This is why when the CFO said what he said, I told people, I said, there's no walking this back now, because you can't say something to shareholders or would-be shareholders and it not be the true intentions of the company. And this is why we kept trying to tell folks, we're like, listen, man, Xbox is telling you one thing, but they're doing another, and they've been doing that for a while.
Yeah.
And I woke up to that as I started looking at the Series X, and as I started to look at, the various promises that were made. And, there was a Series S video that they set to private so no one could see it any longer, because all those promises just didn't come to fruition. And I remember nobody caring about that. And you're saying they're, it's deceptive, it's unethical. But I think we had signs of this when the CFO made his remarks, and then Phil Spencer does an interview with Windows Central and says, well, we have no plans to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Nintendo.
Yeah, but you and people that sort of use the same argumentative tactics that you do, or that hold the positions that you do, use this logical fallacy where it's like, well, this practice is commonplace, therefore it's irrelevant, like, to point out the ethical concerns, or like basically you're saying, well, companies do this all the time. It's like, I don't believe that it's logically sound to say, well, something occurs all the time, therefore it's not bad. Like, those things are mutually exclusive.
I have not said that at all. I've said that.
Well,
people...
it feels like it's like, well, they have done this in the past, and I don't know. It's like that's a non sequitur then. Like, if you're gonna bring up, well, they've done this before, they do this all the time, like that sort of thing. Like, that's a non sequitur then, if it's not meant to sort of argue that then it's somehow more acceptable, or we should expect it, or like, I'm not sure what the relevance of bringing up that it's something that companies do or have done, or it's something that Xbox or Microsoft do or have done, if it's in the context of a discussion about, like, is it wrong for them to intentionally mislead people about rumors that are accurate, saying that they're not accurate. I think the answer is yes. Like, I don't know why it's relevant if they've done it before, or if it's common for companies to do that. Like, I don't think it is relevant, actually. I think that it's just patently bad, and I don't like it, and companies should not do it, and we should all recognize, acknowledge that, and point it out, and point at them and be like, hey, you're bad for doing this. Stop. Don't do that, or we're not going to buy anything from you.
I think the reason that some of us pointed out is because we've been pointing out the doublespeak, the dishonesty, and the broken promises for years, and we were ridiculed for it, and now people are suddenly waking up to the fact that these guys are out here doing doublespeak, and they're not being honest with you. It's sort of like a fool me once, fool me twice situation. It's like, you've been okay.
Yeah, but Ginger's the same way. Sorry, I'm talking over you again. Ginger's the same way about, like, it's like y'all are taking a moment of public awareness, like the public waking up to something that they should have been aware of years ago, and making it like an I told you so moment, because, like, that's cathartic for you guys. But, like, it doesn't actually contribute to the discussion at all. Like, yes, you are more astute and aware and perceptive, and were able to identify these trends years ago. And I said this to his face as well, but it doesn't help anyone. Like, encourage the awareness. Encourage the, like, don't occupy the discussion with sentiments of, well, yeah, this has been happening all along. Like, why are you guys just now noticing this? Encourage the, oh, you're noticing it. Like, yes, let's all notice this together, and, like, react to it as, like, a public consciousness, and not allow this to happen, and let people be, taken advantage of. Like, that's what I'm in favor of. So, like, I don't know how we contribute to the discussion to say, like, oh, they've been doing this for years, or what have you. This is a bit of a tangent, but, like, I think the whole point is, like, yeah, like, if Xbox and if other companies are going to do this to their install base, to their people, like, not their investors, their customers, I guess, who have invested in their ecosystem, let's show them that we're aware through discourse. Like, let's show them, like, hey, this is not acceptable for you to do this. And, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if everybody goes and unsubs their Game Pass, or, like, what, or if people just don't show up and buy the next Xbox. I think that's gonna happen anyway, regardless of whether it's, like, a public statement or not. People not buying the next Xbox. But, like, yeah,
I mean, I'm gonna push back here. I'm gonna push back because I find it insulting for an entire user base and YouTube channels and podcasts to stick their head in the sand for 10 years. And for those of us that have been saying this all this time to get attacked, they use their platforms to spread falsehood, and that falsehood creates tribalism and polarization. And for those of us to suddenly point it out, to be like, well, how dare you point out the fact that we've had our head in the sand all this time? Like, you're not allowed to claim victimhood as you willfully drunk down lies for all these years, and also willfully attacked people. Like, I think that's part of the equation. It's like, sure, there are consumers that might feel blindsided, and I feel bad for those consumers. But for people that use their platforms to false frame and to spread misinformation, to suddenly be like, well, how dare you say I told you so at this point? They can frick all the way off. They willingly accepted and spread lies for years, and a little finger wag is probably just.
Makes sense. I didn't really interact with those people, so.
And I think that's
yeah.
hard too, because sometimes if you don't interact with them, you're like, well, why are people all wound up about this? Well, because we spent years getting attacked for just observing that. I don't know, man. Looks like Xbox isn't prioritizing console. Looks like Xbox is moving away from hardware.
Oh no, man! It doesn't look like y'all side is everything's adding up over there.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. We have had to graciously say, this is stuff we've been saying for a while. Like, I'm not going to be dishonest and be like, yeah, I said a lot of this last year. We didn't do I told you so thumbnails this time around. We didn't do I told you so in the speeches, but we had in the monologues, but we had to reference it.
And I'm sure that was so difficult for you, and I'm so proud, Lono. I really am.
Well, I know you're being tongue in cheek, but I actually don't like the batting average of this year because it makes it really, really hard to not sound like that guy, that know-it-all guy. It's like, we've hit a lot of these way over the fence, and it's hard. And my producer keeps saying, like, just act like you've been here before. Like, instead of making it like a showboaty gloat thing, be like, this is what we do. We analyze the market and make predictions.
Lono's like, no, bro, that's like my whole brand. Like, what are you talking?
Yeah, this is what we do, and I don't think it needs to necessarily be like this arrogant finger wag. We've attempted to not do that and say, listen, I totally get why people are frustrated. I just got there earlier than you. That's really what it is. Like, I got frustrated with Xbox earlier than you, so I can have empathy and sympathy for why they're irritated.
I just hate the divide that creates. Like, I wish that we could kind of all get together in unison and be like, all right, we all agree now. Like, it's like even the agreement has to be a form of conflict. You know what I'm saying? It has to be a form of disagreement of, well, why didn't you understand this years ago? I don't know. Why are you waving that over my head now? Like, it's like everything has to be a point of contention, and I wish that people could just be like, all right, we all get it now. We all get that this is bad. I guess that's just unrealistic to hope for that. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's why this time it's different, because there were very, very strong voices in the Xbox community that basically said enough is enough. Like, they weren't going to sort of toe the party line anymore. That's what I believe has caused the most disruption. Because if they all would have dug their heels in, then it would have been the same polarized tribal drum banging that we're all accustomed to. This feels different. And then you guys on your
side would have been like, it's okay, you're just unsalvageable forever. Like, you would have just been like, if this doesn't do it, then nothing's going to bring you guys over. So I think that's what we should be celebrating, is like that the Tim Dogs and the Colt Eastwoods and the Gazes, like, they like saw the light to an extent, and in some respects some of them are like not. They're sort of rolling that back. They sort of drank the Kool-Aid that Phil was offering, that I'm upset about, that I'm, I guess, sane enough to stick with you and Gender and you guys and be like, okay, I get it now. Like, I took the which pill is it? I don't know. Morpheus showed me the crazy robot monsters. They're trying to eat our brains or whatever. But yeah, like, it's like I'm awakened now. Like, I get it. I see what's going on, and that Xbox is like not our friend. I'm sure that's like, yeah, duh, they're a corporation, but basically that they're intentionally misleading people. And this is all speculative, right? Maybe Starfield never comes to PlayStation. We have to understand that that's a possibility. We have to understand that maybe there were plans for that. That's why it got reported. And then because of the severe backlash, they were like, you know what? This would be so damaging to our brand that we need to revert course on it. And then this one is just one where it's not worth. As Sean Layden said recently on some show that he was on, sorry, I can't credit that show for having him on, but he said, as far as first-party IPs, he was talking about Sony, like a God of War or like a Spider-Man, as opposed to like Helldivers, which is multiplayer. Mm-hmm. As far as the single-player first-party IPs coming to other platforms day and date, he said, I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, was his quote, in terms of the trade-off between getting the extra money from it going to another platform and the sort of brand damage that they would incur from that, of like the exclusivity of the whole thing that we were talking about of with these exclusives and why they could technically be good for PlayStation as an alluring factor. Now, granted, he was talking about the juice that you would get from putting it on PC and Xbox, which might be different than the quantitative juice you would get from Xbox putting their games day and date on PlayStation, right? We could debate that, but I think that this applies here still. Like, I wonder if they looked at the public backlash and were like, oh, maybe the juice is not worth the squeeze on this one. Like, yes, we would get more money, but is it really worth the self-immolation that we would be doing to our own brand, that people have shown us that they really care about this? I think there's still a world where they don't do it, where they had plans to do it, and they're like, you know what? We've seen how damaging this could be in the public arena. Let's not do it. I think there's still a world where that happens, and all these leaks are about previously planned out plans that they are maybe going to abandon. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying we have to consider that as a possibility of the trajectory of where things could go. I think there's still a world where it never comes to PlayStation Starfield, but I would agree with you that the indications are there that it will. I just think that it's still possible that they might have changed course.
I don't think they've changed course. I just think they've altered.
I don't either.
Timing.
I'm just saying it's possible. Like, we're not looking at it like it's possible, I don't think.
Yeah, I think Satya is just going to get his way. Satya is saying, listen, we're a software company. This exclusive thing with this goes hand in hand with the commentary about budgets lately. Like, with the budgets of these games and how large they are, he's looking at the math and saying, it makes no sense. Why would we spend that much money and not put the game, in more places or try to maximize profit? And so I think, Starfield is certainly, on the docket. If the biggest games are always going to be on every platform, according to Xbox's own Twitter, then that's certainly one of the biggest games. It was like the most talked about game last year. So it's just really, to me, a question of timing. And on the subject of Sea of Thieves, if they're going to bring games like Sea of Thieves over, and they're going to attempt to have either longevity or good player engagement, like, what are your thoughts about, these late-stage live service games coming over? Like, if crossplay's turned on, how long do you think it takes for PlayStation players to be like, I don't like this. I'm just getting killed by veteran Sea of Thieves players that are just waiting. They're just chomping at the bit to have a bunch of new blood in the water.
He's the segue master, folks. That's why he's a professional. They have a PvE only mode now. They have a grief friendly mode that you can go into, and even
have you looked into what that entails though?
Not really. I mean, it's a private server is what it is actually.
Well, it's called Safer Seas, and it's basically meant to just sort of be a tutorial. You don't progress almost anything. You don't get to level anything up. It's very It's very trimmed down. Very trimmed down.
It's not good for accessibility. They should change that.
I wish they would just let you do PvE, but I've been told for years it's called Sea of Thieves. Like, they, that's a
well, and I guess also, like, it divides their player base. But with the move coming over to PlayStation and getting all those players, maybe they could finally do it. But if you're asking the question, so I do want to make one final point about the discussion that we were saying looped back into Sea of Thieves. I think that is a contributing factor to all the people pre-ordering it. Is the more that this thing sells, the harder it's going to be for anybody to argue, whether it's Phil or whoever, to Satya, that they shouldn't do this for a Starfield or for an Indiana Jones. And so I do think that people that are like in the know, that are like sort of on the front lines of the console war, that want these games to come over to their PlayStation, they're showing up and they're throwing that $60 down because they're like, yeah, give me all your games. Come on, I'm here. I'll buy them. Like, let's go. Bring them all over. And so they're sort of making that statement financially. They're voting with their wallet, as people call it, to say, like, yeah, if you put your games on PlayStation, we'll buy them. So I think that's another contributing factor to people buying it. But then you asked, how long do I think before people get tired of it? I don't know. It took me 2 hours.
Well, but you don't like the core gameplay. That's not fair, right? You've already decided that you don't like the core gameplay. Who says all these people are going to like it? What's that?
Who says all the people that are buying it are going to like it?
Well, I think that's the question I'm asking is, I was going to put on the thumbnail, I was going to put, will it last? Like, will the hype for Sea of Thieves on PlayStation last? Or is it just going to burn out really quickly when they, like you're saying, they could have a negative experience, or in my opinion, they could run into a bunch of, like, veteran PvP players.
It dies at Elden Ring DLC, if not sooner. There will be no more hype after June 4th.
Why would Elden Ring...
Sorry, no, that's Final Shape. June 21st, just because of the way that that's going to occupy the public consciousness. Like there'll be too many people that move on.
I don't know.
That's just. I mean, that's how it works. That's how
I've always felt like
games
there's
like Fall
there's an
Guys
ocean.
and
No pun intended.
and
There's an
Among Us
ocean
and, like-
of people who play games like this casually that aren't going to be interested in like Elden Ring.
Yeah, but I think we're perceiving this differently. I think that you think that there is a genuine community of people on PlayStation that there was only a fraction of number-wise on Xbox that genuinely want to interact with this game as like a, let's call it full-time, part-time experience. Like they're playing the game part-time and it's the main game that they're playing, kind of like I'm doing like with Skull and Bones right now. And I don't believe that's the case. I think it's a fad. I think this is like the hotness. This is going to be a moment in April when everybody's playing this for like 2 weeks or whatever, because it's a moment of it coming over. It's a moment of the first Rare game. It's a moment of the first Xbox game.
Well, I do think you're making a
over.
point that I would agree with, that they're giving you so much all at once that they won't be able to kind of like trickle the relevancy. But I do think when Sea of Thieves first came out, people were really enjoying it. And now I think that tail can get a little bit longer because like you're not going to run out of content nearly as fast this time around because they're just, the game coming out of the box has so much in it.
Yeah, but there is no content, Lono. Like the gameplay, there is not compelling content. It is, like you said, you're either doing the tall tales, which are like walking simulator, Firewatch type games without the person over the radio talking to you. So that's super fun. And then you get like a dialogue section that lasts like 10 minutes, and then you go do more walking simulator stuff for another hour. And there's like 12 of those in total, or 11. And then there's the core loop, which is like get on your ship, chart a course with your map, go to an island, go find the treasure chest, dig it up, fight the skeletons to get it back on your boat, all but on your boat back to an outpost with potentially other players or ads chasing you. Don't get sunk, don't lose the treasure, and then get it back. And then you cash it in. It's like, oh yay, I've got a bunch of money to buy a pirate coat or a hat. Hooray. And then you just do that 100,000 more times. Like I don't see anybody doing that longer than 2 weeks. That's why the game hasn't been super popular since launch.
Yeah, they've always bragged about total number of players, but I never feel like the engagement concurrent player-wise has been that particularly strong, which is why I always said, like the way that Fortnite caused this big resurgence with their no-build mode, and then it was so popular that they left it. I'm still of the opinion that if they just launched like a PvE focused co-op server where you could just grind with your friends, I feel like that would end up being more popular than the main PvP always online areas. And I've always gotten disagreement with people from that community on that. But I still think there are tons of people, like if you go to Steam and you read the reviews, there are tons of people that have tried to play and love this game, and the community makes it very, very difficult because they're not just griefing, but the risk reward element is not properly designed. Like you can boot up the game, get your ship, and just go shoot people all night, and you don't risk losing anything. Like, because you just get another ship if you wreck.
Yeah.
You can just ram somebody and sink your ship and their ship, and they lose their entire evening, and you lose nothing because you literally spawn that ship when you first came in.
That's the difference with like Skull and Bones. Like there's like 3 or 4 different progression tracks at any one time. Like I've got the Battle Pass progression track. I've got the like my ship is basically like my guardian, right? So like my cannons and my hull and like all those have like stats, and I get legendary drops, and like they've got color ratings and they've got gear score. It's like I'm building that up, like it's got the different slots and whatever, like that sort of thing from those type of looter shooter style online MMO light games. And then I've got like the whole like foundry running like Kingpin, opium and rum empire progression track. I've got different currencies I'm building up, and those directly like let me like I can literally take that currency and go buy a piece of gear that's really really good, or buy a blueprint to make a new ship that I'm gonna make a ship that is like a fire build, so it basically does like 70% more damage when I set another ship on fire, which is awesome. So it's just like a snowballing effect of damage because I'm setting things on fire and then I'm damaging with fire and it just keeps going. So like crazy cracked builds to do that stuff, and like I'm progressing in all these various ways in that game, and then I get off the game and I get back on, and like the progression is where it was when I got off. And I don't understand why people would prefer dropping $60 on Sea of Thieves to not have basically any of that. Like, sure, you were talking about like you can rank up with the factions and that gives you more missions to do, but I don't really see what the tangible effect on the gameplay is for doing that. You know, whereas like I've grinded in Skull and Bones, and I now have the best cannons in the game, which do hella damage, and they have certain elemental effects on them. And then I fought a ghost ship that's like, it like screams or whatever, and it's got like blue flame on it, like the ghost ship. And I got the flamethrower, the legendary flamethrower, the best one in the game, to drop from that ship. I now have that flamethrower on the front of my ship, and it screams like the Banshee ghost ship does whenever I like torch another ship. It's awesome, and it does hella damage. And like what am I doing in Sea of Thieves that's comparable to that? Like, I don't understand the draw there.
Well,
it's just
I think
a goofy like sandbox game with friends. I feel like I think I said this on your show before. It reminds me of something like VR Chat or like Rec Room, but it's not in VR. Like that's basically what it is, but you're a pirate.
I do think that there's some truth to what you're saying, that like some of the elements of the game stay static. Like you're not going to suddenly have stronger boats, stronger guns, stronger sword. However, I think when they started adding the tall tales and the content that could be more experience, and there was new mechanics.
But the tall tales are just walking simulator puzzle bullcrap. They're not like Are you going to let me talk?
Because, like, what are we doing here? Yes, I got two sentences. Come on, brother.
Yes.
You've not played enough of that content, I don't think, because some of that content, there is pretty dope stuff. You go way down in the water. I remember doing all these different mechanics, all these different things. Like, I actually think there is a lot of content in this that is varied and cool. Like, I don't think you're wrong. There is some elements to, like, the thing they did with Pirates of the Caribbean. That was a lot of walking. But there was also these things where it was almost like raids, where like you would go down deep into the water. There were mechanics, there were different rooms. And that's the content that I feel like people started to really gravitate toward, where, yes, I'm not using a different weapon, different boat, different stuff. But I'm doing new content. I'm doing new things. So I think that's where a lot of people did get into this game and got into a vibe with it. And I also think people like that. They like knowing that when they boot up, they're not going to run into a Kirk who has a god tier boat and has been playing more. It's more about their experience and their skill. I think that's the key difference, and that's why I do think there are people that will gravitate to a game like Skull and Bones more than this. But I also think on the other side of the coin, there are people that just love a game like this.
I got you, and yeah, Skull and Bones is PvE until it's basically like a player election for PvP, which is nice. So there's no griefing, but people have also sort of clowned the game for that there's not enough PvP. I think people just want whatever the game isn't most of the time, like with any game, you know? So, yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing is like, if people really like, Sea of Thieves for what it's offering, then that's great. If people really like Skull and Bones for what it's offering, that's great. I guess I think it's annoying to me when like people are like, oh, this game sucks because this other game's better. But it's like, but
sure.
Why? But like, why? Like, I don't know. It's like, but what do you actually want? I guess out of your gaming experience.
Well, and that's always going to happen when there's games like with overlap. I mean, I obviously think with Skull and Bones, the comparisons to Black Flag made more sense because there were core elements of Black Flag that they decided to build a game. And I think a really good game to look at as another test case with this would be the Division Heartland, where they tried to take the survival mode out of Division and they wanted to build like a whole game out of it. And I think that's kind of the mistake that some of these games are making, is they're like, well, we got this good mode, let's just make a game out of it. And we know that they were planning to do that with The Last of Us Online. And I think the Division Heartland was going to do the exact same thing. And that's where I feel like Skull and Bones has misfired with people. It's like you took an aspect of Black Flag and you basically made a whole game out of it. And you're having a good time with it, which I don't think that's impossible, but I think expectations are always going to be a barrier. Like, I'm never going to boot up Skull and Bones and be like, yeah, man, I was dreaming of a game where I could be a boat and fight. I wanted a game where I could be a pirate. And the elements of naval combat in Black Flag were fun, but to me, they were like condiments on the meal. They weren't the meal itself. And that's where I'm just like, you're like, well, you've never played it. I'm like, I know, but I don't need to eat a whole bowl of mustard to know that that's not going to be tasty. Like, that's just going to be too much mustard, if that makes sense.
Can you, like, define or establish for me, because that's sort of the rhetoric that I keep hearing, is that Skull and Bones does not let you be a pirate.
Mm-hmm.
How does Sea of Thieves, in a compelling and enjoyable way, allow you to be a pirate?
I think it adds elements that we have established as part of pirate folklore, where you're getting in sword fights, you're literally with a shovel digging up buried treasure, you're getting out a lantern, you're solving puzzles, you're solving riddles, you're looking at an actual treasure map. I think those elements of pirate folklore, accurate or not, have become what people, attribute to being a pirate. Especially when you watch Pirates of the Caribbean, like, that's what they're doing. They're all about the gold, and there's great sword fights and stuff. So I think when those things are lacking, I can watch 60 seconds of Black Flag, and he dives off the boat, he swims, he hunts for treasure, digs it up, and goes back to his boat. I can jump on a boat and get in a sword fight. And yeah, that's obviously older gameplay, so it lacks some of the action punch of newer games. But I do think those elements missing are where people are like, well, this is kind of lopsided. Like, yeah, naval battles are part of it, but that wasn't all that was a part of what became... I honestly feel like if Black Flag didn't exist, it probably... Skull and Bones would have stood a better chance, because it would have been like, oh, this is such a great concept. Because I know guys that played Black Flag and they never got out of their ship. They just lived on the ship.
Yeah.
Right? So I wonder if Skull and Bones would have launched by itself. Would it have done better than once people tasted that element of Black Flag? So I do think in Sea of Thieves, it touches on some of those elements that are just lacking when you're primarily focused on, ship combat.
Yeah, and it seems like Chad is going off about how it's basically the PvP experience as well. So that makes a lot of sense. Because, like, you and I are not really looking for that PvP experience. But like, they're like, oh, you're attacking other pirates, you're fighting people, you're stealing their treasure, like that sort of thing. So that makes sense. Like, I didn't want to get into the PvP stuff. I wanted bespoke content provided to me from the game, like from the devs, for me to go be a pirate. And sure. I'm not really feeling like it's there. And so it sounds like people are saying, like, no, dude, it's the sandbox. It's interacting with other people, getting into swashbuckling battles and stuff, which I totally understand. Like, there's this thing called a helm wager in Skull and Bones, and it's basically like, there's this currency called Pieces of 8, which is like one of the currencies that lets you get that in-game, loot, basically, like that you can buy from the shop that only takes that currency, like the Kingpin Drug Lord shop or whatever, the black market, that's what it's called. And what you can do is you can go around to all your foundries and pick up the Pieces of 8, and then stack a bunch in your cargo. So like I had like 1,300 or whatever, more than that. And then what it does is, like, when you go to like each one, there's like a chance that it might be like, hey, we're going to give you a double or nothing if you take it. So you need to basically haul butt to this place like 8,000 meters away or whatever, like across the map with your cargo. You will double your Pieces of 8. But if another player, like, you're going to be PvP eligible, and if another player comes and takes your stuff, it's all gone. So what you can do is you can stack it. Like, you could do this with like 80 of them, right? But I've got like 1,500. So I've got 3,000 now to gain if I do it.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, let's do it, because I've done it a couple times. Nobody joined in. It was just PvE. It's hard enemies, right? But you can kind of outrun them. You can shoot some of them, get them to back off. Like, I've got good stats, like whatever. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, this is a good way to climb. I'm trying to get my rank up. I'm trying to progress. I'm trying to get the end game loot. If I lose it, I lose it. But like, I really don't want to lose it, because that's like hours of gameplay time. Sure enough, this dude gets on my butt, and it's just coming for me, like trying to. That was a pause. Oh my god, is coming after me and trying to like shoot mortars at me, and is I can't say things now because everything's gonna sound terrible. He is attacking me with cannons and cannon fire, and I'm almost dead, and I'm running for my life, and I go into this delta like trying to run from him, and so I get away from him, and then finally I'm like, okay, I got to turn and fight. So I unload everything that I have, my broadside cannons, I've got like a bombard cannon that's like a fireball thing. I do mortars, like everything. Get him down to like 1/3 health, and he's hurting, right? So he's got to heal himself. And I'm running. I'm on the run. Everybody in chat's like, pause. I'm on the run, man, from this guy, and I get into like one more fight with him. We get right up next to each other and shoot our broadside cannons into each other's hulls, and like everything sounds like an innuendo now. Oh my god. And I get him to back off, and then I get to the port and I cash in. But like I really thought he was gonna steal my cargo, my loot, my currency, and it was just like that intense, like, oh my god, like I made it. Like I would have been so mad, like I probably would have rage quit the game and like turned it off if I didn't make it, you know. But being able to, and then like and once I made it, like I wasn't PvP eligible anymore, so I like shot like fireworks up in the air, like, yeah, you like na, like I got here, you didn't catch me, like, yeah, that's fun and like that's thrilling. So like I can totally see that type of interaction happening in Sea of Thieves, where you like make off with somebody's treasure, or you get the treasure back when somebody was trying to steal it from you and you're successful and they don't sink you or whatever. I can totally see that happening. I guess it just feels so much more like, I don't know, like it's not as fluid. Like I was managing so many things, and that was just like trying to control the boat and not get sunk and go at high speed as much as that I could, like through this like narrow channel and like all this stuff. I can't imagine doing that in Sea of Thieves and like trying to control the sail and like getting like off the wheel to like go do this other stuff and like shoot my cannons at the guy. Like it doesn't feel like it's like super fluid gameplay wise, but I guess people chat needs to stop. Well, people could be into that. I don't know.
I think what you're saying can happen in Sea of Thieves. It is very different. It is a lot, like, I think more maybe frustrating or challenging to like manage all those things, especially if you have two people manning a boat and chasing you and you're by yourself. I also think the risk of getting attacked in Sea of Thieves is somewhat necessary, because as you're describing the risk and the intensity, I remember playing Sea of Thieves once, and like as I'm putting everything in my boat, I'm terrified somebody is going to roll up on me. I'm watching, the horizon for anybody to come up. And I do think that's where Sea of Thieves could have the PvP, is turned on and your earn rates are turned way up, because there's then that risk reward of, if I'm going to take the risk of going into the PvP environment, I'm going to get more stuff, but then I could also get attacked by people. I would willingly take lower earn rates or slower earn rates to just go into a PvE environment if I knew I could just play for a couple hours with my wife and not worry about some stacked team rolling up. Because like you're saying, like, had that not gone your way,
so infuriating.
Yeah, you would have been pretty angry. And I think
that's like, well, I'm doing it again. Go ahead.
I was to say, I think that's part of the problem is if people were supposed to get into Sea of Thieves by way of the community in the sandbox, I think a lot of people quickly got shoved out of this game, because all it takes is one evening. Because the way it works in Sea of Thieves is if you fill your boat with treasure and you don't turn it in, you don't get credit for any of it. So it's quite literally 2 hours down the drain. And I think that's one of the reasons that the communal sandbox element of this game ended up narrowing the funnel of players. I think a lot of folks are like me and they just stopped playing.
Yeah, because in Skull and Bones it's the same way, but that's like one narrow component of like what you could be doing, and it seems like it's the main content loop of Sea of Thieves, like it's that, and then the alternative of the walking simulator puzzle tall tales with some narrative elements, and it's like you're doing one of those things. It seems like could have gotten the wrong impression, not sure. And to be clear, I played 2 hours of the game and 2 hours probably at launch, but like I watched through the whole, like I was multitasking, but I watched through the whole Pirates of the Caribbean thing, so I would like know what all of it was, and it didn't seem to change fundamentally. There was a cool boss fight like at the end where you fight Davy Jones with your ship or whatever. So like that's cool. I like that that's there. That's a bit of a change of pace. But yeah, like I think like Skull and Bones like offers a lot of a disparity or variety, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in terms of the content and ways that you can do the stupid mobile game harvesting thing if you want to, I guess, but there's like a lot of different things that you can do. And I guess I'm just remarking on like the the content lacking some variety in terms of Sea of Thieves. And yeah, I'll acknowledge to the chat. I don't know what it is. I'm interrupting Lono a little too much today, so I need to work on that. But we haven't had that problem in the past as much, so I
It's
don't know.
Skull
Maybe
and
I came
Bones.
in
It's
with too
Skull
much
and
energy.
Bones. It's Skull and
Yeah.
Bones. He gets really passionate about Skull and Bones to
Dude,
the
people
point where
hate it so
I let it
much.
ride
Oh
a
my
couple
God.
times. I was like, it's fine, it's fine. Then finally, I was like, bro, you gotta let me talk, brother. Like, I'm not gonna say anything. It's Skull and Bones. That's what it is.
People hate that game so much, and it's
Yeah.
like, why? Like, I can understand people just being like, it's not my cup of tea, or it's kind of mid, or like whatever. People are like, yeah, it's like trash. It's like a mobile game. It's like the worst game that Ubisoft's ever made. I'm like, dude, it can't be those things and me also like enjoy like 90 hours of it. Like, I don't understand. And so it makes me feel like I'm like super weird. Like everybody's looking at me like this freaking tree humping weirdo. You know, it's like I don't know, man. It's
That's the
cool.
first
Like
step,
it's
dude. Admit you have a problem. That's the first step. You know.
Kirk, we've called you here today because we care about you. And we
It's an intervention. He's still playing.
Skull and
He's
Bones
still playing
intervention.
Skull and Bones like a month. We're like, bro, we got to talk about this, man. Come on.
Oh my god.
Well, I'm gonna call it there, chat. I feel like we've talked enough about like this is kind of the beginning, and what's it gonna look like if these games come over and they start doing really, really well. We also talked about how long we think it might last, and some of the obvious comparisons to Skull and Bones. So his name is clickable in the description, guys. And usually he's heading to hang out with Ginger, but today he doesn't have to do that. So we don't have anywhere to send you other than I'm going to go to the writer's room and book tomorrow. I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I had to book today by myself.
Making it up as he goes along.
That's right. I just like yesterday when I boot up, like Kirk and I were literally DMing. I was like, what are we going to talk about, bro? So like we were, trying to navigate, and that Sea of Thieves thing kind of took over the timeline. Like everybody was talking about it. And I thought that'll be a good conversation because
To be clear, it's really cool. And if people like it and stick with it, I would totally I would be so in support of that. I would love that for Rare. I would love it if they got a really strong base on PlayStation. It's just that this game is coming to another platform with a new release right after people clown Skull and Bones because it's like, oh, this game you can't even be a pirate. Sea of Thieves is way better. And like it's just like the timing of it is like, oh, like yeah, but like no, if it was completely like a year ago, or if it was 2 years out from Skull and Bones or whatever, and people weren't making those comparisons, I would love and still would love for people to really enjoy Sea of Thieves on a new platform. Like I think it's in concept, it's such a fun and charming idea, and it has a lot of personality, that game. And just because I think that it's a little bit boring doesn't mean that it's a bad game necessarily. I just think comparatively, I don't know what people are smoking or talking about when they're like Skull Bones terrible, Sea of Thieves great. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But like Sea of Thieves is good. Like it's fun. Like there's aspects of it that are cool and interesting that you can't experience in other games. And I think 10 out of 10 times I will be like, if you say that sentence, there's aspects in it that are cool and fun and that you can't experience in other games. Great. So glad that game exists. Hope it finds its following,
Yeah. And I'm curious what happens with it because I've always liked Rare. I've liked their passion behind this. This was a really fun game when it first came out. There were some great stream moments, and they've always been. It seemed like just such a great group of devs. So I would agree. And if anything, maybe it's just a good injection of cash, and they can start working on Everwild, and we'll get a good game from them that'll likely then be multi-plat, especially if this is successful on PlayStation. I would imagine Everwild will be multi-plat as well. So guys, make sure, and if you want to throw him a sub, he covers all sorts of different games. He does more game reviews than I do. I don't have the time to do the game reviews, so you can check that link below. He's also featured with Ginger and Work to Game on a pretty regular basis. I'm going to put a link in chat, and this is for Reforge members or higher, $6 members or higher. We're going to go ahead and go to the writer's room and prepare and book tomorrow.
Should be back a week from today unless Lono decides to sever my contract because I talk over him too much.
I'm not going to do that. Thanks so much for being a Reforge member or higher. This is the writer's room. This is where we plan the next day's shows. A lot of people have been upgrading and paying for their own membership and doing that $6 tier or VIP. We appreciate you doing that. Had a great conversation with Kirk about Sea of Thieves, man. The pre-orders seem to be off to a strong start on PlayStation, and hoping the game also has a strong start. So the link in chat is to writer's room. I'm going to end that talk that we had and redirect folks over and make sure that thumbnail no longer says live.